Hey, welcome back to another 21 Days of Prayer. And if you've read the devotional so far, you read that we're reading about Priscilla and Aquilla. And they were probably a little bit unassuming for somebody who would have such a role in the narrative through Acts. And there was this man named Apollos who was this polished, well-spoken man who was a powerful speaker that everybody would come to see speak. And these two were tent makers. They didn't even work in ministry, and yet they took Apollo aside and explained the gospel to him a little bit better and helped him expound on that better. And I remember when I was in college, I went back to Bible college, and in there I had an internship. And within that internship, the pastor I was working with said, hey, I want you to meet this man named George. And George is probably the best ministry-minded person I know. He's one of the best pastors I know. And so I had this expectation in my mind of meeting this guy who is so great at ministry. I was going to learn so much, and we are going to do so many amazing things. And I showed up expecting Apollos, and I received Priscilla and Aquilla. George didn't even work at a church. He still doesn't work in a church. George drives a dump truck, and he drives around. He talks to people all day, but the more I hung out with him, the more I realized he always knew the right thing to say at the right time. He had a phrase for everything. He had amazing emotional intelligence. He could tell when he needed to stop and talk to somebody, and he was somebody who's just in tune with God and what God was doing in the world around him. And the more I was around him, the more I was impressed. And it comes with, you're around these people, you start asking questions. So I asked George, I said, hey, I'm just going to cut to the chase. George, tell me, how is it that you not working at a church, yet are doing church work all the time? How is it that you're able to connect with people on so many different levels in such a bold way? And George said, there's two things that you have to be able to grasp if you want to do this. And he says, the more intimate you become with God, the less you're fearful of people. He said, most people are afraid to talk to somebody about God because they're worried about what the person thinks. Instead, they should be more worried about what God thinks. He said, so the closer you get to God, the less that people, what they think of you is going to bother you. He said, the second one is most important. He says, you cannot reach a secular world by being more secular. He says, I work in the workplace. I don't work in the church. He goes, I can't reach the world by being more like the world. You reach the world by being more real, being more authentic. The real you is going to connect with people every time. He says, there's nothing better than the real gospel that is powerful. That is what Jesus came and shared with everybody. It wasn't the flashy preaching. It wasn't smoke machines. It wasn't great music. It was Jesus preaching and teaching the truth of God's word. And so that is an astounding thing to think through. I don't have to be this great polished person. I don't have to work at the church. I can just be me. And I can be the real me and introduce people to the real Jesus. And the difference is profound. And so as we're going along today, how are you living that out? Are you growing closer with God every day so that you worry less about what people think about you and think more about what God thinks about you? And are you more interested in being more real like you, or are you trying to be more like the people you're trying to reach them? Because those simply just doesn't work. You have to be you, because people will always connect with somebody who's real.